All right, here is our first experiment for our investigating stream erosion. So here I have my setup. This is just some very wet sand in our little tray here. And for experiment 1, it says to just use your finger to draw a shallow stream or river here. Now we have some standing water at the bottom, so it's going to be part of my river here, and that's okay. So we can see our lovely little stream. I'm gonna scoot this back just a little bit to get the bottom of the tray. All right. All right, so here is our stream, and we are going to fill up our white cup. So this is our white cup. It has a hole in the bottom that I'm going to plug with my finger until we are ready for it to be raining. And then I'm just going to hold it at the top of our stream, and we're gonna watch what happens. So as it is raining, we see that there is water coming down. Now I do notice that there is some sand kind of at the top that's getting pushed around as it kind of floods up near the top. Let's push the sand around a little bit. Gonna let it keep raining here until our white cup is empty. All right, there it is. So now if we kind of look, our whole stream is full of water. I see kind of a bigger kind of pile up here where the water fell. You can kind of see it's pushed some of the sand to the side. We've got some flooding that went over here, but for the most part, a lot of it kind of came down into our basin down here. So that is our observations for experiment 1. You can go ahead and fill in any questions that are on your assignment. All right, now we're gonna do our setup for experiment 3. So we've got our flattened out sand again, removed all the excess water. We're gonna just do another shallow, straight little river here. We do not have that increased slope anymore that we had from experiment number 2. Just kind of going back to our normal. But this time, the thing that's gonna be slightly different is that we are gonna use the red cup. And the red cup has a bit of a bigger hole. So the rain will actually rain faster. Put some water in there. So we're gonna see and observe kind of what happens to our setup here with heavier rain. So think more like torrential rain or like a really bad rainstorm, a lot faster water, a lot faster rain. You can immediately kind of see that it's piling up at the top there. It's kind of moved straight down our river here and moved off to the side. And it might be one of those things where we got to wait until the end to kind of see how much has moved here. But clearly, since it's kind of creating this little pool up there, it's pushed some sand around. So not all of the sand is where it was. It's kind of flattened out a bit up here. All right, I think that's it for our rainstorm. So we definitely had a bit of sand movement up here. Let's see if I can angle it just to get a slightly different, little less. Nope, that's not helping. All right, well, there's a little reflection. We've kind of made a sand little puddle here, so it's clearly moved some sand, flattened it out here. We do still have most of our river that we carved, and then our big collection down here. So it seemed to really move the most right where the rain actually fell. It didn't have as big of an impact downstream as, say, our slope did. But definitely where the rain fell, we had a pretty big impact. So that is our experiment number 3. So you can go ahead and fill in your observations or answer your questions for experiment number 3. All right, we're starting experiment 4 here. So we want to have our same flat sand. I'm gonna carve another shallow river, move the sand off to the side so we kind of have our even shallow river here. Okay, in the center, just like before, we're gonna go back to using our white cup. The difference is we're gonna have some rocks in the way here and kind of see, put one closer, see what exactly that does to the erosion. See if that changes the erosion. Are we gonna get as much movement kind of up near the top And along the river, are we still going to be able to see it? Kind of what's going to happen from these rocks in the way. So again, filling up our white cup with some water, going back to our regular amount of rain. And then we'll hold that up here at the top and see what happens. So immediately we're having some pooling up top because it was kind of not starting to go past the rock, but then it's moving past there. And what I'm seeing is it's moving pretty straight down our path. We get a little extra erosion right around the rocks, but it definitely seems to be slowing down or changing how much of that sand is getting moved. We don't have quite as much being moved around those rocks. I think I put a little too much water in here for this, so I'm going to stop it. So we can see we had our big pool up where it was raining again, but then it kind of kept that straight line, right? And this water kind of moved a little bit around the rock, kind of moved it out of the way, but it did not move these big rocks. So unlike all of the little tiny rocks, which we can think of the sand as tiny rocks that easily got moved with the sand, the big rocks did not, right? And so they kind of created a little obstacle. The erosion changed around those things, and our big rocks did not get eroded. So you go ahead and use that to answer your questions or write your observations for experiment number 4. All right, here we are for experiment number 5, our last experiment. We've got our sand all smoothed out just like normal. This time though, instead of a straight line, I'm going to carve kind of a curved path for our river here and see kind of what happens, particularly along these curves, and how our water moves and how our sand gets eroded. Flatten that out so we can see it nicely. Got our nice little curved river here. All right. We're going to once again use the white cup for our standard level of raining, so that we're just looking at having a curvy river here. I'm going to start at the top again. And we obviously get some pooling up there, but then we see the water moving along those curves. And it looks to me kind of like it slows down at the curve before it keeps going. Now, as our water continues to fall, it's obviously collecting down here because there's nowhere else for the water to go. All right, and I see we kind of have a little extra erosion right around these curves. The curves almost are getting wider themselves, whereas the rest is staying the same. Yeah, because this curve here is quite a bit wider than my finger, which carved it. This finger, same thing, right? So our curves have gotten a bit wider. We have our big pool up at the top again. And then obviously kind of our water's collecting down here. But it mostly stayed that path, but it just seemed like the erosion, there was more at the curved part, but that prevented a lot of the extra movement. So there's a bit extra erosion at the curves, but for the most part, the remainder of that river, right, stayed a little bit more stable. All right, so that is experiment 5. You can go ahead and use this to answer questions or record your observations and finish up your investigating stream erosion assignment. All right, so for this one, I now have our tray actually propped up on these textbooks. It's kind of hard to see from this angle, but this end is much taller than this end down here. So we had a bit of a slope kind of inside the tray before, but now we have a much bigger slope. But once again, I'm going to carve a shallow little river here in the center. Just move that off to the side so we can kind of see it nicely. So there's our little river. And then again, I'm going to collect some water to rain again in the white cup. This is our typical rain speed. So now we are just looking at how the slope or the tilt is going to affect our stream erosion. So I'm going to go ahead and hold our cup up here and let it start raining. And we see obviously the water going down. Now right away it moved enough sand from the top there to actually expose the tray underneath. And where the water is falling up at the top, it's widened quite a bit. A lot of that sand nearby washing away. And our river kind of actually started getting a little curvy there. It looked like it kind of went off on its own a tad bit. And we've got some spread out at the bottom. Once I move the shadow from the cup here, we can see a little bit better what we've got going on. All right, that's enough of the water. So It moved a lot of sand from up here at the top, and our actual path here that I carved, you kind of can't really see it super well anymore. So a lot of that sand and sediment has kind of fallen down and filled in lower here, and then it kind of made its own little path for some of that water to come and collect near the bottom. So we can see a lot of movement, a lot more movement, I think, of our sand, a lot more erosion with our increased slope. So you can go ahead and use that for your observations for your questions for experiment 2.